Uh, Hi, Gary. So I want to introduce you. I'm so happy to see you. I haven't seen you for ages.
I know.
And just for everyone who doesn't know Gary, Gary is a family constellation facilitator, author. Let me just record this as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to
yeah,
share.
yeah. Um, yeah. So Gary Stuart is an author, family constellation facilitator, family constellation teacher. Did I leave anything out?
No, no, no.
Okay.
Activist.
Activist.
Ah,
Okay. And I met Gary when I was in class in Francesca Mason's Boring's
mhm.
class. That was 2008.
Yeah, a long time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah. And then we did a few peer groups
Hmm.
when I remembered you were my baby. Anyway, that was really good. That constellation was crazy and amazing. So we've had and you've been very supportive to me because I was a
Yeah,
beginner. You were already doing it, and you actually trained with Hellinger. Is that right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was trained with Heinz Stark, and then about 8 years later, after I was actively facilitating, Bert did his first training in English in Austria. So a few of us Americans went over there and got certified by Bert.
Oh, great, great. Okay. And now you have this book called
Yes.
Venus Envy.
Taking quite a long time. There he goes, busting the male misogyny myth.
So, do you want to just tell us quick, just concisely say what it's about?
Yeah. So in my discovery, well, basically in constellations, doing it for 26 years, I've probably done about 17,000, and about 13,000 clients over that time were sexually abused, men and women, not just women. And it was so pervasive, secret, and hidden. Just like with the Catholic Church and all the child trafficking now. I mean, it's been out there forever, but it's kind of coming to the surface. So my goal is to give women a voice, um, and so they can let go of the past. And I've had a lot of grandmothers work with me doing constellations so the perpetrator victim energy won't be expressed by their grandchildren, or the boys won't have to carry the male perpetrator that they emanated from, and the girls won't have to be aligned with the victim grandmother or sister or aunt or whatever. So constellations are very powerful, kind of finishing the past so we don't have to repeat it. But the one reason I wrote this book is because most of my clients, I'd say 85% of my clients are women, and the level of oppression in the feminine. So that led me to just do a lot of background research on goddess worship and when did this all start. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to diss Christianity, but it all kind of started 3,000 years ago. And what I did discover, which I didn't know, is goddess worship was the only religion, more pagan like, our earth spirit, for 27,000 years. Most of the societies were not warlike, they were egalitarian, they were cooperative, they were sharing the bounty and nurturing our species at the dawn of civilization. And then all of a sudden, that's why I call it Venus envy. That's a play on Sigmund Freud, wrote a paper called in the 20s, I think 100 years ago this year, penis envy. The women will never be equal because they don't have an external genitalia. They'll always be less and lacking. And the whole world believed that to be true, which is his patriarchal insecurities, I would say, and everyone bought into it that women are less. And the other shocking thing that I found doing my historical research, I'm not anti Semitic at all, even though I have issues about what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now, is that Moses was the one who declared that women were the personal property of men and they were lesser because he spoke to God. Now, I've been reading some Jewish intellectual texts about how the Talmud, which is the Jewish Bible, was edited by Moses to put his patriarchal views in it, which were not part of him talking to the burning bush. He added his own misogyny to the rules of God, so to speak, because he allegedly spoke to God. And then that took off like wildfires. So The saddest thing about Moses, believe it or not, I mean, this is the 3,000-year line where all this started to, the sexism started to gain popularity, is anyone who would not give up goddess worship, he would decimate, kill, and execute whole cities in Israel, what's now Israel, which was Palestine, which is now Israel. So Canaan, he assassinated all the Canaanites, men, women, and children. He started enslaving the females as sex objects, and that's how it. And it took wild root in the whole mid eastern section, and then it started to spread all over Europe. And then of course then I even went into the Inquisition and all these other things that was reinforced in the Middle Ages based on these false myths. That's what got me about my research. They're all false myths. They're not based in reality. It's someone's opinion that people believe is truth. And it's hurt men as well as women. So it's not a triad against men. It's like, how many boys can't be sensitive, a musician or poetry, or a boy who wants to do ballet, whatever, without sexism taking its deadly toll on their dashed dreams, you know? And girls, of course, they can't be engineers, they can't do this, they can't run a nuclear plant, whatever, because they're girls. And none of it is true, but our society is so embedded where I call it the first ism on planet Earth is sexism.
All right. That's great. Is it a workbook? Because I did go through it briefly. I didn't read it all,
Yeah, that's
but I
okay.
did go through it. But I saw it. It's like a workbook format.
I put some notes. I put some notes sections so women could reflect. Like I started with the top 10 myths that I have the book here, so I can go through a couple of them here. The top 10 myths that we believe is true. And they are myths, but everyone believes it to be truth. Just the psychological aspect that women have to believe these myths, that they're less. And I did it, sexism is the first. So I wanted to educate. I talked to younger millennial girls. I said, what do you think of misogyny? What's that? I've never heard of it. So the younger generation, unless there's a misogyny app, they don't even know it exists. It's, of course, misogyny leads to homophobia, whether hatred of gay people, lesbians, or whatever. And then, of course, it leads to heterosexism, chauvinism, patriarchal. So the biggest thing I want to talk about constellations is all the sex abuse cases I've worked. Now, mind you, these women didn't come to me for that. A lot of them came from some other problem in their marriage or this or that. Then the dirty laundry comes out. Oh, my grandfather did this. My uncle did that. And this is true of men as well as women. So it's the underpinnings. What I see as the biggest tragedy with this perpetrator energy is they took a woman's right to have her body. It's like they lost the right. Number one, they lost the innocence. Then they lose the right to have a body or the ability to say no, which I think is the biggest kind of crime against humanity. Women cannot say no to a sexual perpetrator. It might be their father, their uncle, their brother. And because it's so embedded, women just, I mean, ironically, lay down and take it or forced to take it. And then they carry the guilt and shame over what was done, which actually belongs to the perpetrator. So as you see, this is all a good fit with constellations because these are the dynamics we work with.
Can you say a
Yeah.
little bit more about why women can't say no?
I think because it's embedded. So don't forget, Sarah and I both work in this field. There's a transgenerational aspect. So if women are under kind of patriarchal rule for their whole lives, they believe the myths to say that are true, that are not. And so if the grandmother couldn't say no, or the great grandmother couldn't say no, then the granddaughter will do it, and the daughter. So the women will feel they have to be in lockstep with the other generations of women who came before. Hence, they all get victimized in the same way. Now, there's a crazy dynamic which shows up a lot is, as you know, about family loyalty, and that they'll be loyal to be a suffering victim like the other women. Like the women will identify that to be a woman is to be a victim in my family system in the world. So there's another false belief that misogyny is cast on the world by the males. And we're not trying to demonize the males here because don't forget, the men have fallen into the same trap. You got to be strong. You got to be tough. You can't hurt. You don't cry, even if your finger's hanging off from an accident. Be tough. Go to the hospital. So all these messages, even in the mails, be a good soldier. Kill. It's okay to kill. Whatever the insane messages are from Western civilization, it's really not so civilized. So it hurts both genders immensely.
Okay, so what is your intention behind the book then?
To educate people. Number
Mhm.
one, I did not know there was 27,000 years of goddess worship. Like, we're talking about beyond Neanderthal and all the figurines that they've found, and to wake people up that have been living in this, as we see with the false narratives of COVID and modern society here, those who didn't fall for the myth that they created around this virus or disease or temporary condition, much like the flu, everyone falls into a lockstep without questioning reality. So I chose, after my 26 years, to question reality. How does all this happen? Now, the biggest common discovery that I really had is misogyny creates, what's a good word to say? Men are unaccountable for their actions. I cannot tell you, I've had Mormon clients where the men could do anything to anyone in the family, and it was all zip and not talked about, and people were denied the essence of their being. Why? Because the fathers of the church said men are unaccountable, we're divine, cousins of Moses, or whatever belief you attach to it. And they didn't have any accountability for that. And I can't tell you how many women suffer in men. I've had men who were sodomized at the camp with their uncle on a Cub Scout weekend at 10 years old. And then till they left home at 18 or 20, they had to sit at the Thanksgiving table with their father, knowing their uncle sodomized them in the camping tent and had to keep it secret his whole life. And I've
Yeah.
done amazing constellations on that too, to heal the male lineage and find the secret gay male that wasn't allowed to be gay, hence it was acted out very snake-like through generations, perpetrated actually as pedophilia on the children.
Yeah, yeah.
Hidden secret in the male lineage, no one was allowed to be gay. Why? Because the patriarchal misogynistic system didn't allow that. That was worse than death, to be considered gay or openly gay or whatever. And so they would hide everything in secret.
So what is the remedy? Like, how do you heal this?
Well, I feel, well, as you know, constellations are very effective at finishing the past. I see in the constellation community, there's a lot of trauma worship happening. And my view on trauma is, let's finish it and let it go. How much
What do
energy?
you mean? Sorry, what do you mean trauma worship? I haven't heard that before.
It's like people, I don't know, not that it's setting up altars and you don't have access to the ancestors unless you do this or that. Make it very dogmatic and ritualistic. I really side on the side of consciousness. Whatever makes us more conscious allows us to change and let go of what doesn't serve us. Now, a lot of people identify as a victim and they're afraid if they let that go, they'll have nothing. They'll have no part of themselves left. So maybe that's why they're addicted to trauma. But I feel that if we can let it go and be free and then lead the fulfilling life we incarnated with, that's bigger than our family system. And the irony to that, we go a lot about our family system and constellation, which is fine, but what is the greater force bigger than the family that protected us from them enough to survive our family? There's a bigger force than our parents, or the same force might have put our parents together. Then the insanity came out, then we had to live through that insanity. And then some of us who are conscious don't repeat it, and many others do repeat it in lockstep, generation after generation.
Okay, so the remedy is to let it go,
Let
to
it
be
go.
conscious and let it
To
go.
be conscious, but you really do need something like constellations to see it. Before I discovered constellations, I did primal therapy. When I hunkered down with a modality, I'm doing it every week for 8-10 years. And the longest one is, of course, constellation, because it's the most mystical and practical at the same time. But I did not get to the stuff. It turned out sexual abuse was in my family system. And I was so busy dealing with being a battered child and all the anger and violence against my body as a young boy, and now I can look back and see it was my father's PTSD from being on Omaha Beach in World War II at D-Day, killing Nazis up the yin yang to survive that, then coming back as the soldiers all came back and created. Oh, this is an interesting fact. Okay, so guess how many people were killed in World War II?
I don't have any idea. I'm sorry.
75 to 85 million people.
75 to 85 million.
The whole planet, right? World War
Wow.
II. Guess with
Wow.
the American soldiers and all the soldiers who went to their marriages and starting families, how many children were created post World War II?
I don't know. Tell me.
75 to 80 million.
Wow. So it
What
matched.
is the balance of life and death? So in constellations, we look at the bigger cycles here. And that is quite a cycle. So here, as much death that happened, what happened? That created the mulcher seeds for life to take the place. And 90% of baby boomers were like anti-violence during the Vietnam War. I happen to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, near Harvard University. I was marching every weekend. I was going to move to Canada rather than go Vietnam. And I saw my selective service letters I sent the government at 16 years old when you had to register to be a draftee for Vietnam. And I said, I don't even kill bugs. Why do you think I'm going to kill a Vietnamese person to make you happy? And at 16, I was fully aware that I'd rather leave the country than kill another human being. But was that a reaction to my father being an A-list killer of Nazis?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I've even honored the Nazis as fallen brothers, that they're part of our family system because they gave their lives to the American, say, justified perpetrator soldier. Well, I gained my life because he was a good killer. So it showed up in many constellations. My father rep said he was like a tree, and he said, I have all these dead bodies around my feet. So he was like the last man standing to all the dead Nazis around his feet. So I often wondered why I never wanted to have children this lifetime, separate from sexual preference change at 35. And I wonder if I didn't do that because that's a way to honor the Nazis. You didn't get to be an adult, get married, and have kids. Well, I got the gift of life because you died, so I will not have kids in your honor because you didn't get that privilege to stay alive and do it. So it's like a soul compensation, which we see in constellations all the time.
Oh, that's super interesting. That's great. So what else do you want to say about the book?
Well, I mean, I put my heart and soul in everything I do, and I have a bunch of constellation books on Amazon. Oh God, Master Universe, Healing Human History, which I really like. What's another one? Ancestral Intelligence, AI, Ancestral Intelligence. So I always like to be tongue in cheek and just stir the pot a little bit with everything I do, because constellation work is very controversial, and Bert took the heat for a lot of things he said. But where he was German, more from an authoritarian society, which was more patriarchal. And I'm not dissing Bert at all, but he had that kind of chauvinistic mindset, and I saw that with some women. And I said, oh my God, I said, if he ever said some of these things in America, he would be strung up, and he was talking more about the general orders of love, orders of life, orders of generational families. So, I understand the concept definitely, but some of the things like that were definitely overlooked in his work while he was alive. He's been dead 3 years. About a couple of weeks ago, I think it's 3 years that he passed on.
Yeah. Is the book for men to read as well?
Absolutely. I really kept that in mind. They might get an education, and I did a bunch of pages, around 10 pages of goddesses from all over the world. It was so funny when we were putting it up on Amazon, it said I had 1,000 typos in the book. Well, these are African names of goddess, Indian names. They thought they were all misspelled, but they were in the original language of Copelli, we've heard of. Oh my God, we have Inca, Mama, Oskelo, Pachamama, which many people have heard from. We have Mayan goddesses, Sumerian, Armenian. The Canaanite goddess was Nikal, Nikkal, stuff I never knew. Then we have Chinese goddess, Filipino, Vietnamese. So how many people who think that Jesus or whoever they believe God is the only alleged monotheistic deity that ever was created on earth. Well, just the fact that the book lists the history of 27,000 years of goddess worship, and basically it's kind of the Judeo-Christian that took over about 3,000 years ago, and that's the norm right now. But a lot of people don't know the prehistory of religion, and I learned a lot. God, the amount of books I've been reading over the years, history. There's a great book out by a Black woman called When God Was a Woman, before it became this angry, vengeful male. And there was a lot more peace on earth, let me tell you.
There's a lot more what?
Peace on earth.
Peace. Oh, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
in some
yeah.
ancient societies, the men took care of the kids and the women went out to hunt and defend. But there was much fewer wars when women, matriarchy or matriarchal societies were in power. There was much less bloodshed on earth. It was more nurturing. And how we are, I mean, you look at Mother Earth, and if you really look what's happening on Earth, and I don't buy all the climate change scam, because Earth has its own natural cycles: hot, cold, wet, dry. Sure, maybe we speed it up 100 years, but it's still going to be hot, cold, wet, dry through eternity, because that's Earth's life cycle. But if you look at what men are doing, you could say the misogyny of corporations are raping Mother Earth, polluting her, taking all the resources, capitalizing on those resources, to the point of all these virtue signals that are happening. Oh, I have a Tesla, I'm saving the environment. Well, I have pictures of little children in the Congo, 5 years old,
Yeah.
digging cobalt mines. Oh, did you include that with your Tesla? Did you include that the false narrative of the patriarchy, that it takes coal-fired plants to charge your battery while you think you're saving the earth? So there's so many false realities out there now. And I think COVID really brought that to the fore, and people are really questioning everything that we're forced to believe, which is untrue. So unfortunately, what scared me most about COVID was not the disease, it's how many people can be brainwashed and convinced to be to the point of violence if you don't have a mask covering your nose, that you're a perpetrator. And I lost a lot of friends because I questioned the mask. But you look at it as I see it kind of as the Greek myth, Prometheus. Men are so arrogant, they want to conquer the sun. Well, I'm going to make fake wings. I'm going to fly to the sun with my wax wings. Well, guess what? You got too close, your wax wings melted, and you crashed and burned. So I see that as a metaphor, what's happening now. Men are just going, the mankind, let's say the patriarchal mankind, is thinking they're bigger than Mother Nature. Talk about being too big or too little. The arrogance, we control everything. We're creating a transhuman technological thing that's better than Mother Earth, and don't take any herbs or substances because they're natural. We have pharmaceutical. If you really look at patriarchy and misogyny in business, in science, in law, a lot of the problems we have on earth are because we're kind of going off the rails with these false belief systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for all of that. That's
Yeah, oh yeah,
great.
I'm passionate, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. I also lost quite a few friends, and
Yeah,
over that, because I absolutely refuse to wear a mask.
yeah.
I'm just not going to do it. I'm
Well,
gonna do
it's
it. And
scientifically unproven. And then I said, did you
yeah.
see Dr. Fauci saying masks were useless?
Yeah,
And he did a
exactly.
video, the biggest mistake they made in 1918 with the Spanish flu was wearing masks. He actually did a video after COVID, said that was the biggest mistake in 1918. So it never has worked. And this isn't about so much COVID that we're talking about. It's the modern day oppression of
Exactly.
males who take over medicine, who will go to the medical boards and get doctors, real scientists, barred from doing their work because their patriarchal narrative is the only narrative that's out there. So we're living right now with forced myths put upon us, and anyone who can have critical thinking or rational thought is demonized because they're saying, well, something's rotten in Denmark here. I can't put my finger on it. Well, allegedly, conspiracy theorists did 3 years before you could even think that there was a plan going on. Most people are so myopic, they just, okay, lockstep, okay, follow the leader. I don't have to think, just do what I'm told, do what I'm told. This is good for me. Oh, wait, you're not doing that? You must be evil. So they kind of blame the critical thinkers as being the perpetrators when they've been brainwashed by the perpetrators not to think. So it's a
Yeah.
catch-22, very 1984.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. Well, thankfully we're past that now. Hopefully, I think there's too many people that are not going to fall for that again.
Well, they'll create
Yeah.
new versions of fear, believe me.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all based in fear.
Yeah, it'll
But
be
you
new stuff.
basically stop watching television, don't listen to
I know,
mainstream radio,
exactly,
and
exactly,
think sort of question everything. But
absolutely.
one more question. So how long did it take you to put this book together?
Actually, I found the title page in my Word docs in 2010. So I probably wrote 4 or 5 other books since that, but it was burning in the back burner. I got to do this. I got to do this. And with COVID and everything, I think everything was kind of gestating. And I think it came out at the right time. In some of the insanity that's happening right now, do you know in Michigan, if you use the wrong pronoun when you address someone in Michigan, it's a federal 4 felony, 10 years in
Yeah.
prison and a
Yeah.
$20,000.
It's insane.
I
It's
mean,
insane.
it's
Yeah.
it's happening everywhere on subtle levels and dramatic levels throughout the world.
Yeah.
And one thing I did want to say that I have 16 women who told their stories about how misogyny affected them in their families in childhood. And I didn't want to be me, a gay male, saying, well, this is what I believe to be true. Then they'll think either I'm a nutcase, but it was really reinforced by the women's stories, everything I said in the book, and it's their point of view. And then I closed it with mine because I didn't know I was going to become gay as a little kid. And I wrestled with it for years before I finally came out. And I never had put my personal story about my struggle with that and my personal, you could call it internalized homophobia, that it was the worst thing in the world. And I grew up in the 50s, early 60s. So I bought into those myths that what could be worse than a woman, a gay man, a feminine man. And that was the mindset in the 50s. It sounds ridiculous right now, but that was the mindset, 50s, 60s, and it didn't start to lift until the 70s. And being in Harvard University, I mentioned I was marching in 1973 for equal women's rights and burning the bras. I was right there. Harvard University was the epicenter of radical change. One weekend it was equal rights for women, another weekend it was apartheid in South Africa. So I was really on the ground floor there because I lived in that city and I actually took courses at Harvard University myself. So, and we won. So by the masses getting involved, we ended up winning all those victories. And that's the sad thing what's happening today. The misogyny and the patriarchy now has police that are oppressing, and we didn't see it any more alive as in COVID, when people were attacking people, throwing them down, beating with batons because they were speaking out in Australia, which is absolutely New Zealand, America. The amount of police violence by the patriarchy to oppress anything, and to the point of any pharmaceuticals that were natural were oppressed as well, because you can't use nature to cure anything. You have to buy the patented pharma thing that we have permission for. And if you look at right now, they're coming out, we never told you couldn't take ivermectin.
No, I know.
We
I
never
know.
told you that vitamin D would protect your immune system, and
Backpedaling.
well, of course, because they're guilty. And
Yeah.
you look at the guilt that's happening. I get the financial reports and they think Pfizer may file bankruptcy because
Yeah.
people are buying the
I saw
myth.
that.
Everyone's finding SV40 in the vaccine now. Now, you know what that is? Live simian cancer cells in the vaccine.
Mm.
And it's being, they're starting to challenge Pfizer. Why did it didn't enter the bottle without an intention? So why would you put live cancer vaccine to heal COVID? So it's starting to come out, but ironically, believe it or not, this is a military operation, and they created a dummy company. So when Pfizer declared bankrupt, there'll be a separate company taking over, which is part of the military, to absolve them of any money losses. So Pfizer will keep all the money. Then this government created a corporation to handle the bankruptcy proceedings will say there's no money to pay you for your damages or losses from a toxic alleged vaccine. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's how the patriarchy works. We're really seeing it. And I think if we're going to have a conscious shift as a species, now is the time for people to wake up and say, wait, we've been hoodwinked for centuries, and it's time for us to take back our power. Much like women's rights, that's why we see it's human rights now. And I'm against the underage trans thing.
yeah,
The California's new law they passed
yeah,
that the state can take your child and you do whatever you want after you're 18 or leave home, but they're too young to just make these medical things. And why would the government get involved in that?
exactly. And
It,
then there's all that secrecy with schools, like
mm-hmm,
transitioning the children behind the
mm-hmm.
parents' backs, and you know.
But that's the
Mm.
patriarchy gone wild.
Well, I see it as it essentially in the end, I see it like canceling out women.
Absolutely. And it is a
Mm.
battle against the feminine, but that's
Yeah.
on absolute control. Then you won't even know what gender you are. Like they're disallowing that it's an insult to say you're a man or a boy, or an insult to say a woman.
Well, yeah, I mean, now you can't say, like they're saying, you can't say pregnant woman, it has to be pregnant person,
I know
and
exactly.
chest
Birth
feeding,
person.
yeah, chest feeding, not
Yeah, I know
breastfeeding.
exactly.
And it could, and I heard this yesterday, that there's a theory that it's men don't want to have to need women, so men can do everything, like
Mhm.
birth children and
Right,
or create
exactly.
children.
But
They don't need the women,
it's
and
all
this
anti-feminine.
is all leading up to it.
Yeah, yeah. And
Uh,
the yeah, and it's very tragic. The thing that really got me the most is what was her name? The new Supreme Court Justice Kajanji Jackson or whatever. They
yeah,
asked her final question at the hearing was define mother for us. Her four children and her husband were sitting behind her, and she had no definition of mother when she is a
yeah,
mother. How insane
yeah.
is that?
No, I know, I
And so
know.
you look at the languaging, it's horrifying that people are kind of being hypnotized by the language. So that's why I
Yeah,
feel also the rape of Mother Earth is just endemic of the patriarchal misogyny that just takes all, scorches and burns, leave it as a wasteland because men are in charge and we know better than anyone else, which is not true. Hopi prophecy predicted kind of this to happen. A lot of the prophecies predicted. So is it actually a positive in the long run that everyone's going to wake up and take back our power, especially the feminine? And when will mothers be revered? Planet Earth will be revered. We'll replant the Garden of Eden. I go all the way. What do you call it? Prince William is doing the moonshot to save Mother Earth or whatever. And I entered that moonshot and I said, well, global warming is indicative of not enough vegetation from cutting down trees and all that. I said, photosynthesis works and all plant life breathes CO2. So if there's too much CO2, that means there's not enough plants. All you have to do is a global, either hemp planting or tree plant. Actually, hemp is better because it manifests to full adulthood in 6 weeks, whereas a tree takes 30 years. I said you could have a massive, plus you can use the hemp to make paper. You won't have to cut down trees for paper, blah, blah, blah. I sent them
yeah,
all that. I get no response. But now they're doing, well, if we build smokestacks everywhere and force the carbon into the ground, and the
yeah.
latest harebrained scheme by Mr. Bill Gates, which he's pushing, is cutting down all the trees and burying them because
I
trees
know,
cause global warming. What kind of misogynistic
I
insanity?
know, I
And
know.
so I keep putting stuff out. Oh, photosynthesis stopped working. Oh, Bill Gates owns photosynthesis now. You know what I mean? But people are buying this myth. Oh yeah, we gotta save the earth, cut down tree. It's like what? Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, I know. It's totally misleading and
And it's against the
manipulative.
feminine. Like you said, everything is against the feminine. The men are in charge. It's our planet to do as we please. We were made in the image of God, not you. Well, that's a bold-faced lie too. So my final thing I put in the book is who birthed God to get people to think and talk.
Yeah.
I look at the whole universe as a womb. The dark matter in the universe is really a womb, and all the bright lights, you could say, are fertilized, sperm fertilized galaxies dotting the whole galaxy. But the whole dark universe I see as the inside of a womb, a metaphor for the human womb. And all the stars are potential babies or fertilized children that could come out of that womb as a new planet, a galaxy, or whatever. So I think basically the universe is inherently feminine because that's the creative principle for all living things. And I also included some of the other biblical references. The book of Virgin Mary. Did you know there was a book of Virgin Mary for the Bible? A book of Mary Magdalene, a book of Thomas, and a book of Philip. None of them, where they were written for the Bible, none were included because the universe was feminine in nature and the creative principle was feminine. So here you have a book touting Virgin Mary as the divine messenger of God with the savior of humanity or whatever, and they won't put her book in the Bible because it has a feminine slant. So it shows you the Bible, for me, and I'm sorry, any Christians, you may disagree because they're your savior and all that stuff, which is your belief, but it was written with a misogynistic slant.
Yeah. I mean, I heard ages ago that, the Holy Ghost replaced the feminine.
Absolutely. The same thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you really look at the Holy Trinity, I see as mother, father, child.
Yeah, exactly. I
You
mean,
apply
yeah.
that to Hellinger, that's the
Yeah, exactly.
recreation of life for another generation, and they couldn't have a woman in there, so they changed it to a ghost spirit rather than, and yeah, it's sad that so many people believe all of that's true. So I put some alternative ways of thinking in it. So, and when people get the zealous religious righteousness that how dare you question the Bible written by God? No, it was written by men who pretended they were God so they could have more power on earth. A lot of people don't know, I've done a lot of religious research over my lifetime separate from this book, and that Sir Francis Bacon edited the New James. The reason I'm saying it, the New James version of the Bible was edited by Sir Francis Bacon in England to make, which king was it? King Richard? I think it was James. The St. James Version was to make the King of England look like God on earth, to replace Jesus, or he and Jesus would rule earth. So it was all contrived on purpose to deify monarchs so they would have absolute reign over all life on earth. Almost like, you could call King James, it was King James, obviously, King James Version, like he would be Jesus's replacement in England after the new Bible was rewritten to deify the monarchy. So you being a British heritage, we see all the stuff that's happened there for centuries. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. Wow. Listen, so we're coming to an end.
Okay, great.
But thank you so much. But where can people get the book?
Amazon. It's on Amazon. And I can
Okay.
give you my link or whatever. It's Venus Envy. The ebook is now $9.99, and the paperback, and it's over 200 pages here, is $19.99.
That's a great deal.
Yeah.
And are you doing any book signings or anything?
Well, I got to get my books first. So probably at my workshops. I do live constellation workshops in Los Angeles. Has called me back. I didn't want to go back, but it's been a few years, so I don't mind going back for one event here or there. And I do workshops in Sedona and Prescott once a month. So I do about 3 workshops a month, 3 to 4, maybe 5, depending on the month. With the holidays, less, obviously. Yeah, so I bring them to all my workshops, and people can get them there or get them online, whatever they like. But it's to stimulate you to open and think that what we've been spoon-fed isn't real, and make some decisions for yourself, and don't buy into the repressed female that's being shoved down our throats.
Right. And do you have any events coming up?
Oh, yeah. I'll be in Sedona Saturday, and then next week I'll be in Prescott. November 18th, I'll be, a drug treatment center called me to see if they could apply constellations to the recovery, not for people in the immediate danger zone, but people who have recovered. And I've always wanted to do that. And I said, 90%, there's no demon out there. The demon is the ancestral dynamics you're carrying that are too big for you to handle. More than not, what I found is generational grief is why people do drugs. The pain is so great, and it's not their pain. It happened from generations before. So I'm thrilled to introduce this to the addiction community, so to speak. We'll see how it goes. It's my first one, so hopefully they won't run out. What happened?
And do you have a website or
Oh yeah,
email?
Gary
Yeah.
Stuart Healing, STU, Old English, STUART, healing.com. And I
G Stewart, did you say?
Gary Stuart.
Oh, Gary Stuart Healing.
STUART, healing.com.
Okay.
And I got lots of other things happening. We have a new 5G website we're doing about the dangers of the technology taking over. It's called zapfilms.com. So a friend and I created a film company. We're going to be posting stuff everywhere based in science, and yet another way for people to look at the technological squashing of every human on Earth, you know.
All right.
Fighting the good fight here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Gary, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And yeah, stay in touch.
Absolutely. And the feminine will save us. The birth of the feminine is going to save us in the last hour. So I'm a champion of that happening.
All right. That sounds great. Okay. Thanks, Gary.
It's the book. Yeah. It's the book.